Hey everyone, I'm Karan from Enable. In this video, I'd like to go through all the separate settings found in AbleSet. We covered many of these settings in the video series in their respective videos, but since there are still some we haven't covered yet, I just wanted to give you a quick, complete overview of the entire settings menu. Let's first go through the global settings found in the menu bar. I can either choose to open AbleSet in a browser window or a floating window. The floating window will basically live above any other windows that you have open, and the browser window acts as a normal browser. Below that, you'll see which license your machine is registered to, and I can also click Manage Licenses to see my AbleSet account and see all my licenses in there. Also, I can choose to deactivate this machine. Now, most of AbleSet's settings are actually project-specific, and I can open those from here, but let's just go through the rest here. We already talked about the web app password. I can set it in here, and then I'll have to enter the same password on my remote devices for me to be able to control AbleSet. And I can see multi-file project-related settings below that. I can choose a project folder. I can decide whether project changes should be saved, and I also have the documentation linked right here. And as far as documentation goes, I also have the general AbleSet documentation right below that, and I can also add the AbleSet plugin to Ableton, which will basically install the remote script for me. The AbleSet controller Max for Live device was used for MIDI mapping AbleSet's playback controls before MIDI mapping was available natively, but if you still prefer to MIDI map your controller this way, you can get the controller right here, and it will open up the Finder and show me the Max for Live device. If I want to modify custom styles, I can show the custom styles from here and make any modifications. I can also choose to open the AbleSet folder. This is new with AbleSet 3.0. Now you have a folder in your Ableton project folder where many of the AbleSet related files are going to live. So if I click on this, you're going to see that this opens up, and this is a subfolder within my project folder. I've got different settings, and I've got different set lists, and I've got canvases and all kinds of things. Basically, I can also now use this to copy set lists from here or to paste set lists from other places, or this is especially useful if you're downloading canvases that other users have created. You can import them right here, and they will be available in your AbleSet. Also, one really good thing is that I can now also copy over MIDI mappings to different devices. Okay, now back up here in the menu, I can select Change Hostname, which will open my computer's settings, and in there I can define a new hostname if I want to change it. The preferred network setting is once again really useful if you have multiple networks connected to your computer, like a Wi-Fi network and a wired Ethernet network or multiple Ethernet connections. Then below, I can see the AbleSet version that I'm currently on. I can check if there are any updates. I can submit feedback directly, and sometimes in troubleshooting, it's needed to create a log package. So you can create that from right here, and this will just create a zip file, which you can then forward to the customer support team. And at the very bottom, I've got the option to quit AbleSet. Okay, next let's go into the main settings menu from the menu bar right here. At the very top, I can decide whether I want AbleSet to appear in my dock. If I don't need this, since AbleSet lives in the menu bar anyway, I can just decide to hide it. You'll notice that AbleSet usually opens in Setlist view. I can change this right here. I can choose performance view or lyrics view instead. So just to demonstrate, if I choose performance and I go back and I open a new browser window, there you go, I've got performance view. Just going to set this back to Setlist for now though. I have another option to open AbleSet on start. Basically, this means that whenever AbleSet reopens or you open a new Ableton project, a AbleSet window will open alongside it right away, and you won't have to open it manually from the menu bar. I talked about the different window options of AbleSet. You can decide here whether you always would like a floating window or you would always like a browser window. This mainly relates to this Open AbleSet button right here. So if I click that, you'll see that a floating window will appear. If I toggle it off, I'll get another browser window. Then we also have an option to auto-launch the last live project right here from AbleSet. Auto-launch the last live project is a really useful function if you're mainly using AbleSet with one specific live project. What this will do is if you open AbleSet while Ableton Live is closed, this will actually launch the project that you had active when you last used AbleSet. Okay, we already talked about all these playback related settings, but I'm just going to go through them one by one. So if you have autoplay enabled and select a song in the set list, that song will get triggered right away. With auto jump to the next song, AbleSet will always queue up your next song when it reaches the end of one song. Always stop at the end of songs basically overrides the individual stop after song toggle in the setlist edit menu. And then restart song before jumping back is the different behaviors that AbleSet has when you press the back arrow. Basically, It can either take you to the start of the song that you're currently in if you're jumping back from the middle of a song, or it'll take you right away to the actual previous song. The next option lets you define whether the spacebar and the on-screen buttons are going to pause the playback if you're in the played state, or are going to stop the playback. So once again, the difference between stopping and pausing is that if I pause playback and press play again, AbleSet and Ableton will actually continue playing from the point where I pressed pause, and if I press stop and then retrigger playback, the song will start from the beginning. Okay, so disable loop when jumping is on by default. This means that queuing a jump to another song or a section while you are in the looped section will escape the loop and execute the jump according to your jump mode. If this setting is disabled, you can queue a jump, but it will only be executed once you manually escape the loop. Next up, I have the option to re-enable automation on song jump. This is kind of cool if you are using automation as kind of a default state and you make a change during a song, but you always want AbleSet to return Ableton to the default state when you start the next song. And then we have safe mode, which again gives you protection against accidental stopping and accidental jumping. We've already discussed the jump modes in depth, but quantize will basically listen to your Ableton Live global quantization. End of section will execute the jump at the end of the section. End of song will execute the jump at the end of the song. And dynamic will use the end of section mode if you're queuing a section, and the end of song mode if you're queuing a song. And then manual jumping is basically, again, the two-step process where you first queue the jump and then you trigger it manually with a separate command. Okay, next up we have section count-in. We already looked at what this means, but I got the option to solo the click during count-in and change my count-in duration. I can also check out the documentation down here. Okay, next up let's look at the MIDI mapping, OSC, and scripting section. I'm going to go back into Edit, MIDI mapping, and then as we've already seen, I can just click the plus button to learn a MIDI mapping from any controller that I want, or I can just also create a global mapping by learning it under any MIDI input up here. You'll notice that if I click this right here, it'll actually cancel listening for MIDI mappings. And the AbleNet toggle is practical if you have a MIDI controller only connected to one of the host computers in your redundant setup, and then this way the MIDI will get forwarded. I also now have the option to manually create MIDI mappings, so I don't need to automatically learn them. So I can create a MIDI note mapping, a MIDI CC mapping, or a MIDI PC mapping. And then if I create this, I can set the parameters to which AbleSet should react. But I can also now create a script for any MIDI input, and this will basically execute the script when any MIDI comes through this input. Okay, now let's go back here and look at the OSC settings next. So I can choose a OSC device name. This is again going to be specific to the remote browser that I'm using, and it'll just help me address specific devices with OSC messages that I'm sending either from MIDI mappings or with timed OSC messages from OSC tracks in my Ableton session. And then I can also go ahead and create a new OSC connection right here where I can add a IP address and a port, and also a port on which to listen back to. Okay, next up I've got the OSC command tester, and once again, if I type a / in here, I will get all my available OSC commands right here. So if I, for instance, decide to send a big notification saying AbleSet is awesome, I can trigger this right here, and there you go, I got my notification. And then again, I can see my OSC traffic right here in the command log. Okay, let's just go back and click into project scripts. This once again is a script that runs whenever AbleSet is started or a new project is loaded, and it basically can continuously listen for OSC changes, and then I can write those values into variables for later use in canvases and other places. Once you've created your project script, you can actually save and run it from right here, and you won't need to reopen your Ableton Live session. Let me just go back here. And then I got another scripting related option right here. So we talked about shared variables that can basically be used anywhere in AbleSet. So between MIDI mappings, project scripts, and canvases. And I can choose to persist these variables. This means that the next time that I start up AbleSet, the values for these variables will still be there. If I don't want this and I want the variables to reset, I can just turn this off. Oh, and one more scripting related feature that I can see here in the project script, if I have the log function active, I can actually open up a log to see my logged values. And the same thing is true in the MIDI mapping as well if I'm using scripting in here. Okay, next up we've got LTC timecode. So I can choose whether I want AbleSet to display the timecode or not. And I can get the LTC display plugin from right here. Then next, there's a more niche setting in the set list. I can decide to remove played songs automatically. This will basically make my set list shrink as I go along, and a song that has been played or a song where the stop or song end marker has been reached will actually be removed from the set list, and I won't be able to actually jump back to that song. This might be interesting for you in certain use cases, but it's an old feature, so see if you want to use it or not. Just make sure that if you are using it, do not save your Ableton session at the end of your set, because that will save the empty set list into your Ableton Live session. Okay, right. The next thing we can look at is the mixer. We already know that we can add different track groups. Right here, I have the option to include my main track as a track group as well. And then in the mixer, I'll get the Ableton's main or master track as a separate fader. Next up, we have these 3 helper tools. So the first one relates to clip colors. In earlier versions of AbleSet, if I wanted to color in my section clips, I would actually need to use color attributes like we're used to with songs. But now, since the plus clip colors flag exists, I can use this tool to actually convert the color attributes in the clip name to the actual clip colors itself, and it'll then actually go in and remove the attributes as well for you. Just keep in mind that this only works on tracks where the plus CC flag is already inserted. Then once again, we talked about jumping and section clips and how jumping is only possible if there's a locator at the section clip you want to jump to. So I can automatically place these locators from here, and I can then again remove the automatically placed locators from right there. Okay, next up I have a debug section, which can be helpful if I'm having any issues with AbleSet that I want to troubleshoot. So first up, I can see my connected devices. For instance, right now I have AbleSet open on my Safari browser, but I also have it open on a Chrome browser. So I can see the related IP addresses, which in my case obviously is only going to be my localhost address. And then I can also see a latency right here, and then a latency log right here as well. Next up, I'm going to check out the device settings. This will just show me whatever settings I have set up for my device right here. And then finally, I can check out the debug logs. So I can enable log streaming, and that will just show me all of the different things that will get written to the logs. And once again, this is really helpful for troubleshooting or if you're communicating with AbleSet support. Okay, let's move on to redundancy in AbleNet. So I can activate AbleNet from right here, and then I have the option to follow current audio interface scene, which if I have scenes assigned to my separate hosts, my remote devices will jump accordingly to the scene that is currently active. And then down here, I can open the documentation specific to AbleNet as well. Okay, then moving on down here, I've got some more AbleNet settings. Obviously, if I had more AbleNet hosts connected, these would all show up here as well. So my current host is always going to be at the top. I can see its IP address. I can enter any custom IPs that I want to connect to, and I can tell AbleSet that this is scene A or scene B if that's the case. Next up, I can activate automatic drift correction, which will allow AbleSet to nudge my playback within the first 10 seconds of pressing play if both my computers are not in sync. And finally, I have the sync playback now option at the bottom, which is useful if my current host that I'm on is stopped while another host is running. I can use this to sync up the stopped host with the running host. It's also good to know that this option will not be there if your host is currently playing back. So the sync playback now option is only available to hosts that are currently stopped and need to be synced up. Okay, guys, that wraps it up for the settings. Thank you so much for sticking with me throughout these videos. And obviously, if you want to check out AbleSet, head over to ableset.com. We'll also put links to the socials for AbleSet and for Enable, and we'd really appreciate if you could hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks once again, and have a great day.